Good morning, everybody. Good morning here from the Western Cape in South Africa. By the way, my name is Tanya, if you have never seen one of these lives before. So for those of you who watched last week and who were part of this live will know that the Lord spoke to me and said the trading floors are changing. You know what? His kingdom is advancing. That means everything is changing, and this also means that we change. Quite a long time ago, the Lord I had an encounter with God, and it's an encounter I had with him in heaven. Yes, I was with Jesus, and the next moment I realized that I was in a lift, kind of a lift with Jesus in heaven. Now, I don't know about heaven. I don't know about the places in heaven, but the only things I know is what I've encountered in heaven with him. And this was one of those encounters. And we were going down in this lift, not up, we were going down. And I realized we were then in this place that looked like a type of a quarry. I was just aware of Jesus. There's not really a speaking, but there's a knowing. And as I was looking, I could see that out of the quarry, there were these swords, forged swords that had been forged there, coming out of these ledges in the quarry, coming out, and they were coming towards me. And as they were coming towards me, I heard him say that I want you to take these swords and to give them to people. And meditating on this over the last day, especially as I was learning about what this word means, I realized that it is something that the Lord is wanting me to trade in. And now, if you don't understand what that means, maybe you do, but there is an equipping that God wants me to do in people's lives of this new weaponry and new revelation and how to do warfare, how to walk in these things in these times that we're living in and going forward. So the first thing I want to just get to is that if you've been in the space of certain things that has been happening in your life and you realize that things are changing, there's definitely a change. Maybe your season is changing. Well, I want to tell you your season is changing. And I didn't get this. This is from someone else. But I just thought this is exactly what I've been experiencing in my life over the last 2 years especially. And I felt to share this with you because there are signs in your life that you can see, okay, yes, this is the place that I am in. And the reason why I want to share this is to encourage you that it's going to be okay. It's okay. The way you know this, that your season is changing in your life, is there's a shift in your priorities and your desires. There's a closing of some doors and an opening of new ones. There's unusual opposition and spiritual warfare. Come on, can you relate to that? Absolutely. There's a sense of discomfort and restlessness. I do not like this place of discomfort and restlessness, and I've been experiencing this because God is setting you up for something new. Relationships changing. Some people that have gone from your life and others that have been added. There's a new level of responsibility and a stretching of your faith. There's a desire to go deeper with God and a hunger for his word more than before. You get a deep sense of peace in the midst of these circumstances. There's a change of financial supply that he has for you. That's from manna, that place of where they were just living on his manna, his provision for every day, to milk and honey. And there's a call to step out in faith. So the point is that he's not changing. God doesn't change. God stays the same, but we are the ones that are changing. And our seasons, the spiritual seasons, are changing. And after hearing this word of the trading floors are changing, because this goes together with this, what does this look like? How does it affect me, my life, and others? And I would say you need to start looking outward even more. How does this affect my community, the nations, us as a church, as an ecclesia? And I want to start off with this. Well, trading is so part of God's kingdom. And I think there's just been other words that we put to it. And the one question that we ask God a lot is, what is my purpose? What is my call? Why am I here, Lord? And when you say yes to that, then you've already made a trade. And God then anoints you and does what he does to equip you for this. The spiritual trading floors, it's not a buying, it's a trading. And these spiritual trading floors are spiritual dealings, good or dirty, because you are doing it at the expense of something. In every temple, godly or ungodly, godly, well, that's what they used to do, there's a trade that happens. And then there's an altar that is established. There's some things I just want to get out of the way. I just want to mention this to maybe just build a bit of a foundation before we go on. Basically, when you go and buy something, a bread and milk, you get the bread and milk, you put it on the counter, and then you have to pay for it before you can take the bread and milk. It's not a stealing, it is an actual legal trade that is happening. But in the spiritual realm, we are not buying, we are trading. And the very first thing that happened in the heavenlies, in the heavenly realm, right there where God's throne is that Satan himself was the first one that started to do this. In Ezekiel 28, you can go and read from verse 14 onwards, but it says there, God says to him, you were blameless in your heart, your ways, from the day you were created, and then it goes on to say, until wickedness was found in your heart and in you. And then goes on to say, through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence and you sinned. And it's not the trading here that God is talking about, saying that he did wrong. It is what was where it started. It is what was in his heart, the wickedness that was in his heart. I just want to mention here that this happened at God's holy mountain, and in the spirit, it's a spiritual dimension. It is his mountain, Zion, it is Eden. It's a spiritual dimension. And a lot of our trading floor happens here, and it is in God's presence. And this is very special, people. And then he goes on to say in Ezekiel 28 that I cast you out as a profane thing from the mountain of God, and I destroyed you. And this all happened from the midst of the stones of fire. And the stones of fire is this trading floor, and it's right there by God's throne in his presence. Isaiah 56 verse 7, actually he speaks about it in Matthew 21 verse 3. In Matthew 21 verse 3, he says that my house will be known as a house of prayer, of worship, but you've made it a hangout of thieves. And that is when Jesus went into the temple and he, threw that stuff out of the temple, and he said this to them. And I want to emphasize that his house is a house of prayer and worship. But the point is that Satan started to draw the attention to himself because of pride. He wanted all the worship for himself. And worship, true worship, is not just about singing a song. It is about a laid down life. It is about us laying down our lives, a living sacrifice. The martyrs who've laid down their lives, they lay under the altars, and it says that they cry out, Lord, Lord, when will it happen? When will it happen? We've laid down our lives for you. When will we see this happen? And so very clearly there's a trading of lives, of life, and Jesus himself was the ultimate exchange, the one who, instead of our sin, he offered himself up. There was an exchange that happened. And unfortunately, this is something that Satan, that the devil trades in, is the souls of people, of lives of people, the lives of children, of little babies that are being sacrificed. And this is an ungodly exchange. This is a demonic exchange. And in the spirit, what happens, it's got huge consequences when a soul is destroyed like that. The sex trafficking, human trafficking, that is trading, and that's demonic. Jesus' life, the greatest exchange that happened. And we can always, because of Jesus, what he did, we are going back towards Eden. We are being changed and transformed to be like Adam and Eve in the garden. And as I've spoken about it before, it wasn't just a little beautiful garden. It was a piece of heaven on earth. It was absolutely this divine place, and they were divine people. But that is what God is transforming us and transitioning us back to. So this trade of Satan that started in that place, it has led to things. Now what it has caused in this world that we live in, this system that we can see in operation, is that there's been a trading of God's creation, of him being the creator and he created, for evolution, which is an absolute lie. It's not even a fact. But yet we've chosen that. People have chosen that over God's creation. There's also being a trading of God's covenantal promises, which is very different, and his principles, for power and possession. You know, God's covenant promises is that he is our provider. He provides. He is our protector. He is the one that fights for us. He is our everything. But instead, it's traded for selfish gain, for more finances, more money, more of mammon, and then power and possession. That's what it becomes. Also, people have exchanged God's commandments for humanistic government ideals. I know that you and I can see that in operation in this world. Another thing is that we exchange God's blessings for success in the world system, and to have and run after and trade to be maybe more of a CEO in a company, so that we can, have more money in the bank, have more possessions, have more houses and cars and all of that, so that we can be safe. You know, what is your financial nest that you have set up for yourself? God is really wanting to shift that, our finances, to kingdom finances, to kingdom economy. And we need to ask him then, what does that look like? So on the trading floor, we're trading in God's principles for worldly success. And this creates generational curses in our bloodlines. You know that because of open doors that was opened by your ancestors, because of those open doors, generational curses then come in. The story that I heard about a lady who prays for people for deliverance. She counsels, and God uses her a lot in deliverance. And these people came to her for prayer, and as they were asking God to show them what is the issue here, the word blackjack came to her mind. And she asked the person, does this word make sense to you at all in your generation, in your forefathers' lives? And she said, yes, there was gambling. And so then the Lord showed the counselor that it went back 6 generations. And that in this gambling that was happening, and by the way, blackjack, they don't bet against players, they bet against the dealer. And the dealer in our lives is the enemy. And they then went back and they prayed over that, because in that moment, their family was sold out. There are other examples of where these generational curses come in. But out of my personal walk, in life, and for me personally, there's been too many things that have shown itself in my life, demonically, where it came back to that. issues of my own heart and my mind, and for us, for my husband and I, in our journey where we've seen, okay, no, there's a problem here. And you must ask questions and ask God. Go to God first and ask him, and then ask people. And he will lead you in this and how to then deal with these generational curses and to pray. Now I want to get to this, and this is what I touched on last week. Our identity, who we are, and a lot of who we are is now we have become those priests. Where before, and as I mentioned the temples just now, when you go into a temple, you can either do if you are not a Christian and you are worshiping another god, idol, and you have to go to the temple to make offerings, to trade in the spiritual realm. A lot of that's in the demonic witchcraft worship. They will trade for curses or for blessings. Sometimes it will be money that's given, or it will be other things where it's happening in the spiritual realm, and people don't actually understand how this can affect your life and your family and your generations to come. And if you've done that, if we've done that, we need to deal with those things. But now us as well, where before they would enter into the outer courts and eventually move past the altar to the most holy, the inner courts, the most holies of holies, where only the priests, one at a time, I think there would just be one at a time in the holy of holies, God's residing, God's presence. If there was sin in their lives, they would fall dead in that place. But that's why they had to first go to the altar to make a sacrifice. And there was so much to that. Now, because of Jesus and the veil was torn in the temple, we have access to the most holy of holies, because he says, you are now my priests, my ones that are set aside for this worship in my presence. But people, we still have to go past the altar. Going past the altar into the Holy of Holies. And on this altar, we lay down our lives. There is a laying down and a sacrifice. Even if Jesus has paid the price. And this is in our living, in our walk. We are laying down our lives. Where Paul says, we die to self. We die to self. We die to self and we live for Christ. In Christ, we are alive. You know, the woman who came into that room with her bottle of perfume, she came in because she recognized Jesus, her Messiah, in the room. She knew what he was about. She recognized heaven on earth, and in that moment, she paid that ultimate sacrifice. And she made a trade. A spiritual trade, a beautiful trade. And she was saying, I want to give it all in exchange for Jesus, in exchange for who he is, not what I can get out of it. How do we trade? How do we trade? How do we do this? Have we given all of ourselves to God? Have we laid down our lives, our finances? Have we laid it down before the Lord? Instead, we still ask God for a house, where God says, ask me for nations. And how many houses is there in one nation? And that is what I was talking about earlier. The changes and shifts in your life, the signs is that your finances will go from just your daily mammon provision to honey and milk. So I really believe that he wants our attention. And the reason is, as well, is because in the world that we're living in, and I don't know if you've noticed, but there is a lot happening. There's a dismantling of structures, of governments, of the way things have been done. There's a coming apart of those things so that it can make room for the new. In the same way in your and my life, There's a dismantling, a change to make room for the new. And I know there's been a lot of talking about the new wineskins. And I want to say, even that, I almost want to say this. Away with the new wineskins. It won't be able to hold this new. It's literally like the caterpillar in the chrysalis that is totally destroyed. Only the breathing pipes are left in that caterpillar before it becomes that butterfly. Making room for the new. When Jesus was in that temple and he said that my house, when he was so angry about them dealing in that place, there's a lot more to that, but he said, my house will be a house of prayer and worship. And the same when he spoke to the woman at the well, worship is changing. It is now of the Spirit. It is changing for us as individuals, this being a house of prayer and worship, but also as his ecclesia. And when we start to live like this and we operate in this, we will see in the spiritual dimension, as we do this in the mountain, at the mountain of God, the spiritual dimension, that we will shift things in our lives and over entire cultures. And this is part of the legislation and the dominion that I spoke about last week. In the Ukraine, the war that's happening there still now, there's a lot that you see on the news, on the mainstream news, things. I've been saying this for a long time, even during COVID. We watch these things on the mainstream news, not realizing that it's false news. They're not going to give you the truth. They're not going to tell you, actually, this is really what's going on. There are places where you could possibly see, but now with AI, that's even changing. And AI is a type of warfare. But in the Ukraine at the moment, they're using drones to target specific things. These drones that are flying, okay, actively looking for a target. In Iran and Israel at the moment, these different types of missiles that they're using is not like the old ones. Very specific missile systems that they are using. It took time. There was a lot of intelligence gathering that went into this. Planning, selected targets. They're not just shooting everywhere now as well. There's a lot of planning that goes into this. And so therefore, in the same way, we should have an understanding, insight, heavenly insight into how do we do this warfare, how do we live in this, and so much more. And this life is a life led by the Spirit. This life is a prophetic life, a knowing that this is what's going on and this is how, as God leads you. If we want his presence, are we willing to take what comes to us, this sacrificial life, the trials, the difficult circumstances, the attacks of the enemy, which is going to be a different type of attack. In this, God is wanting to equip you even more. He's changing you in your thinking, in your life, so that you can live this life that I've been talking about. And I just want to start off with this foundation today. And I really hope that it's given you more of an understanding. And as I said, I'm going to be talking about this even more. And I can see how it all goes together. All of this that I've been sharing since last year and even the year before. And if we want to be those mature people, weighty with his presence, then we're going to have to learn how to trade in the spiritual realm as well. I just want to say thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.